Okay, Mikey, you filming? Alright. Well, welcome to the Undead DVD Season 1. Woohoo! Well, we finally made it.
Oh, jeez, I feel safer already, thanks.
Okay, so Episode 1. I believe that would be breaking up. It's not really our Episode 1, but it's the first episode we shot, so yeah, we'll call it Episode 1.
That's kind of a lot of bull, isn't it?
Patty Pelton wrote this one originally, and the story behind this one goes that since it was our first episode, we were using a camera that didn't really have autofocus, or actually didn't have a manual focus. So you'll notice in the diner sequence that kind of drifts in and out of focus.
Does he have to be... Move.
That prompted me the very next day to go out and buy a new high 8 Sony Handycam. So that's what we used for most of the rest of the episodes. Also in the episode is Jochen Repelust. He's a buddy of mine. We'd been working together for years doing stage combat and sword fighting, and he was good enough to come in on this episode and actually shoot a lot of our following episodes as Mikey.
Get out of here! I said to go home! You big jerk!
One of the things you'll notice on this episode is, or on all these episodes, is that Mikey's height is variable. Since I play Mikey for half this episode, and Carrie Glover, who's I don't know how tall you are, Carrie, there, but you can tell a difference. There's the shot of me looking over the car at Patty, and you can tell that Mikey's considerably taller.
Get back in the car, I said don't come.
The effect of the glowing eyes is actually a little trickier than you might think. Did a little R&D on that. First off, you have to do a pretty close camera track since everything is hand cam. Then you need to kind of simulate the lens flare. It's funny, when we first shot this episode, we tried to tell it from beginning to end, and found out that it just wasn't funny enough. One of the things we established in this episode, which we keep going back to, is intercutting these interviews, and it really seems to help us out. Unfortunately, we'd shot a lot of this stuff, a lot of the action, we figured it was going to run like Cops, just top to bottom, one shot. But now since we have the intercuts, we don't necessarily have to use just one shot. We can go from one take to another, which is kind of how I saved a couple of the shots in the diner. When it was drifting in and out of focus, I liked part of one take and part of another one, and we needed some way to separate the two, so we used these intercuts.
He's not really someone that you take home to mom.
Breaking Up Part 2. This was a continuation of one of our few continuation episodes where we had an opportunity and we just had to take it, which was we had donated to us haunted house. I hate haunted houses. We also made use of a mall, the Westside Pavilion, during a Halloween evening, thanks to the folks, our actors, Patty Pelton, Jochen, Carrie, everyone who came out, Tina Berklar, who came out on Halloween and gave us their Halloween night to shoot this episode. We also took advantage of the street party in Santa Monica, on Santa Monica Boulevard. Truly scary for all its own reasons.
Oh yeah, this is a great idea. Whose idea was this?
They block off, I think it's 10 city blocks or something like that. 70,000 people hit the streets. It's crazy. Since we were shooting on Halloween and the haunted house was still open, we had to wait until after the doors closed, and of course this is a late night venue. We ended up shooting this at about 1 or 2 a.m. and I think you'll notice that Jochen at some point in time here has to do a full backflip with wearing a full trench coat at the end of this sequence, which we shot at least, I don't know, about 8-10 times, start to finish. It was a long, long night. Tough Love. This was written by Carrie Glover. Thanks, Carrie, for a great script. We took advantage at this point. We made use of my buddy Kit, who just happened to be playing Robin in the Batman and Robin show. And yes, he is a stunt man. Although Kit right now is studying to become a lawyer. What's up with that? We ended up putting together the fight sequence that you see in the garage. We ended up putting together in about a couple hours, since these guys were already trained stage combatants. We also were fortunate enough to be able to shoot at a bar down the road at Brennan's.
Wham into the wall, boom, hits the ground, show's over.
And once again, this was one of our first episodes, so we weren't sure if we were going to get kicked out or not. Once again, not really asking permission so much as, can we stand over in this corner and shoot this episode? At some point in time, it was interesting. It wasn't a packed bar, but everybody seemed to move away from us and give us space and allowed us to shoot this scene.
Huh? You want to help me? Leave me the alone.
So this is more of a social commentary than it is about vampirism. We just sort of substituted alcoholism and put in blood addiction.
Not gonna let you do this, kid.
Friends don't let friends drink blood.
Dance of the Undead. This was sent to me by Pat Pazinski, who was taking a stage combat class with Ed Douglas at the time and wanted some experience.
And why are we filming?
And since this show was developed initially for my students, I figured, well, you know, she's got the drive to do it. Well, more power to her. So we tried to come up with an episode which would feature something that we could use for production value. And she was a dance instructor, so we ended up working in that her actual dance recital.
You know, I don't care if this is LA Times Pick of the Week, vampires or not, these guys got to go.
And it's interesting, people were asking, well, how did you get this entire crowd of people to watch this, you know, to come in to be in this episode? It just happened to be the dance recital that she structured around an episode. It was interesting, though, because neither Pat nor Robin, her partner, had ever really been, ever acted before. So this was an interesting experience for me, trying to play the director, getting non-actors to bring out a scene. And I think they did really well. I was really quite proud of what we were able to accomplish.
Look, I hate to interrupt, but you guys obviously have issues here, and I don't think you should make any hasty decisions. I think you should sit down and talk them out, and then communicate with you.
Blade in Training. This is an episode sent to me by Richard El Sabre and his partner Darnell Mayfield, and they brought along David Valancourt and a couple others for what was originally an epic. It was so long, but we managed to cut it down, and I told them they could go ahead and shoot a sequel, which we still haven't gotten around to yet, so it's kind of an open-ended episode. We really packed a lot into this one episode, and it was shot pretty much all in one day.
What time it is? It's getting late. I can't believe you're still out here.
Richard and Darnell here were students of mine and weren't necessarily actors, so it was an education for them in acting, but I had to somehow intercut between different takes. So one of the things we did, again, we fell back to what we did in Breaking Up, was to shoot these outtakes. We went to Universal City Walk.
His mom's not a vampire. She was a legal secretary.
And it was one of the very few times we were busted by locals. We were shooting upstairs, and at one point security came up, and I believe it was a shot that Darnell was looking at me and doing an interview, and he had on glasses at the time, so I could see my reflection in his glasses. And so I threw on a black cloak on backwards, and it was fairly obvious that we were doing some sort of production. And so they kicked us out of Universal City Walk, one of the only times we've been busted shooting this show.
The hunt will never... And...
Star power. Yeah, this is something I've been wanting to do for a while. Is to shoot an episode of Dragon Fest, which I've been invited to for several years. Also in this episode, Shara Frost and John Gumbach were developers of the sci-fi-webchannel.com. It's another website that wanted to feature The Hunted as part of its content. So I came up with this concept that they actually had been interviewing stars for their site. So we brought Shara out to do just what she does. She was interviewing stars at Dragon Fest.
Are you serious?
Also, it helped that I also knew Richard Lynch, who I'd worked with on Dragon Fury, on the first Dragon Fury. Kerry Tagawa, who used to live across the hall from me.
Good luck.
Yeah, also in this episode, Gene LaBelle, who I happen to work with on Ring of Steel.
Because the more money you have, the better the food is.
I was also fortunate enough to get TJ Storm, who I worked with on Dragon Fury, and he was seen in a season of Conan. And he did a great job. Thanks for coming in, TJ.
Hey, where's my $20? I'm serious. Oh, this sucks. You guys do the same thing as UNICEF.
2 for 1. This was hard work. We shot this first off on location at Sword and Stone Studio.
Don't touch!
Which is owned by Tony Swatton, who's done a lot of pieces for film, made The Hook on Hook, and it's just, he's got an amazing shop, and he let us shoot there, which it was one of the biggest budgets for an episode because I promised him we would buy him dinner. And I believe he went for the works. We went to a steakhouse down the road, so this is probably the biggest budget for any episode.
1001, 1002, 1003.
Cash?
Yeah, my brother Stu came in for this episode and did a fantastic job. Basically, came across looking a lot like Tony Swatton from the shop, and we based the episode off of course, the Cheese Shop episode from Monty Python.
So you have swords?
Yes!
Really?
No.
This is a fight sequence. The Hubbard fight sequence is a fight that my brother and I resurrected from a show that we did almost 20 years ago when I first started doing a Renaissance fairs, and this was back in Miami at the Crandon Renaissance Fair, I believe, with the Royal Chessmen. I mentioned earlier that this fight scene went top to bottom, since we weren't going to cut in between anywhere in here. We shot 27 takes of this fight sequence with halberds. These are really freaking. These aren't imitation halberds. These are in spears. These are the real thing.
I'll take 2.
Okay, Showbiz was another Patty Pelton project. Actually, it was all hers. She came in with a script. She wanted to do some wire work. She had a team of guys, really good guys, Reuben Langdon, and we had a location that we couldn't pass up, which was Bob Yerke's Backyard Circus. And unfortunately, anytime you do wire work, there's a lot of setup involved. And we spent half of our morning. We did shoot this in one day, all of the location stuff. But half the time was spent just setting up the wires and getting some of these stunts done. We did some speeding up on the fight sequence. Unfortunately, video ends up having a artifacting. There's a little ghosting in between the images. Once again, when I edited this episode, though, telling the story from top to bottom, it didn't really play as funny as we had hoped. And one of the things that saved us yet again was to go off to a bar somewhere and have Patty just improv stuff, which she does just beautifully.
I'm only dating Swedes and Argentinians now.
Some of the other talent that Patty brought into this episode was phenomenal. Ming Liu, who is doubled Lucy Liu on Charlie's Angels.
Stupid actress.
one of the other really big coups for me on this shoot was to get Bob Yerkes himself. And I'm pretty sure it's not the first time he's had to come out to his backyard and tell people to get off.
Out of here, right now. You two, come on.
And that ends Hunted Season 1. Congratulations, you made it this far. There is also Hunted Season 2, if you are so daring.
A man's got to do what a man's got to do.
So thanks again for purchasing Season 1. There's a lot of cool episodes coming up in Season 2, so don't miss out if you haven't already gotten it in Season 2.
This is my only chance. I have to come in under the radar because they own the TV, the papers, the cops, the whole legal system from the top down.
He's not really someone that you take home to mom.
Oh, please. I'm not done yet.
Vampires are real. I know that it sounds crazy, but I have proof.